Meher stood by the large bay window of her master bedroom, watching the sunlight spill across the manicured lawn of her estate in DHA Phase 6 Lahore. A gentle breeze rustled the white curtains, carrying in the distant sound of fountains from the marble courtyard below. Her hand instinctively rested on her round belly 8 months along now, and the baby was becoming more active by the day. Each kick reminded her that something new was coming, something that would change everything. From the outside, Meher's life was the kind people envied. Her husband, Sam Khalid, was a billionaire entrepreneur whose face frequently graced magazine covers and talk shows. Their wedding had been the stuff of tabloid sparkling chandeliers, celebrity guests, designer lehengas, and a venue that screamed excess. Now, their home was a fortress of opulence, gold-plated fixtures, custom Italian furniture, private chefs, and staff who tiptoed around like shadows docked to anyone watching. Meher was the picture of a woman who had it all: beauty, status, and a powerful husband. But reality, as it often is, was far more fragile than the polished marble floors beneath her feet. Over the past few months, Zaim had become someone else. Not overnight, but in fragments. A colder tone here, a missed dinner there. He stopped texting her during the day. When she sent him ultrasound photos, he responded with a thumbs-up emoji. She noticed how his kisses became brief, how his touch disappeared altogether. Whenever she reached for his hand, he gently pulled away, pretending to check his phone or adjust his watch. He began working late more frequently, brushing her off with vague explanations. "It's just the expansion project in Dubai," he'd say. Or, "I have a call with the Singapore team. Don't wait up." At first, Meher believed him. She had always trusted Zaim loved him deeply. They had met during his struggling years, when his startup was just a dream scribbled in a notebook. She'd supported him through sleepless nights and bank loan rejections, celebrating each small milestone with faith and loyalty. Now that the empire was built, she believed she was reaping the rewards of that journey together. But slowly, doubt crept in. It began with how he looked at her or didn't. His eyes no longer lit up when she entered the room. Instead, they glazed over her, as if she were just another part of the decor. When she tried to talk about baby names or the nursery colors, he nodded absent-mindedly, replying with clipped sentences. And when she confronted him about his distance, his reaction was almost rehearsed. "You're overthinking, Meher," he had said one night, not looking up from his phone. "This pregnancy has made you too emotional. Just relax." That night, she cried quietly into her pillow while he snored. Beside her, the man she had once known, the man who used to write poetry in her birthday cards and bring her chai during exam stress, had become a stranger sleeping in the same bed. Yet she clung to hope. Maybe it was the pregnancy. Maybe stress from work had changed him. Maybe once the baby arrived, they would return to being a team. She told herself that every marriage had phases. She recited all the cliches her friends whispered at kiddie parties. Men pull away sometimes, they don't know how to handle pregnancy, they always come around. She wanted to believe it, but there were moments, fleeting, chilling moments, when Meher saw something else behind Zaim's eyes. Not stress, not distance, something darker, a coldness. A flicker of calculation. Once, as she walked down the stairs, she caught him on a call. His voice was low and sharp, and when he noticed her, he ended it abruptly. "Just work," he said, smiling tightly. But Meher saw the way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes darted away from hers. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her hand resting on her stomach, she whispered softly, "Who are you, Zaim? And what are you hiding from me?" The golden illusion was beginning to crack. And deep down, Meher knew something was very, very wrong. The golden thread that once connected Meher and Zaim was unraveling slowly, painfully, and without warning. Days turned into a series of unanswered questions, empty evenings, and a cold mess that now lived in the very walls of their home. Zaim had begun coming home later and later. At first, he blamed back-to-back meetings and last-minute investor dinners. Meher tried to be understanding. She knew how demanding his work was. But soon, the excuses grew vague and repetitive. Something came up. Don't wait up. It's just work, Meher. Stop asking so many questions. Sometimes he wouldn't return until after midnight. Meher would wait, eyes glued to the clock, every minute adding to the pit in her stomach. When she'd finally hear the front gate creak open, followed by the slam of the main door, she'd rush out relieved, worried, hopeful. But Zaim never greeted her with warmth. His shoulders stiff, his eyes tired or deliberately cold. And then came the verbal shifts. His tone sharpened. His patience thinned. A single question about his whereabouts was now enough to ignite an argument. Why are you being so clingy? Pregnancy doesn't give you the right to police me. Maybe if you focus more on yourself and less on me, you'd be less paranoid. The man who once brought her flowers just because now brought insults. Without reason, Meher tried to ignore the signs. But then came the evidence, subtle, yet undeniable. It began with a faint floral perfume on one of his shirts. Meher didn't wear that scent. She noticed it again on another collar. Then came the receipts. One was from an expensive boutique Meher had never visited. Another from a 5-star hotel restaurant on a day Zaim claimed he was working from. His office all afternoon. Still, she hesitated. She didn't want to accuse him without proof. She didn't want to be that wife. But the feeling of betrayal lingered like a stain impossible to scrub away. One afternoon, as she folded laundry in their walk-in closet, she found a lipstick smudge on the inside cuff of Zaim's white shirt. Not hers, a bold red. She hadn't worn lipstick in weeks. Her hands trembled. When she tried to speak to him that evening, her voice was careful, gentle, trying not to sound accusatory. Zaim, is there something I should know? I feel like you're hiding something from me. He stared at her in disbelief, then scoffed. Here we go again, he said, tossing his phone on the bed. You're letting your hormones mess with your head. She tried to hold his gaze. I found receipts. Perfume on your shirt, lipstick. Zaim's expression darkened. You're spying on me now? Seriously? This is what happens when women get pregnant. They lose control and start acting crazy. Meher felt her throat tighten. I'm not crazy, I'm your wife, and I deserve to know the truth. You deserve to relax and stop making things up. He stopped. That night, she cried silently in the shower. Her trust had become a punchline in his twisted narrative. He was gaslighting her, warping reality to make her doubt her instincts. The next day, she bought a small diary and began documenting everything. The dates he came home late, the insults, the evidence she found. She wrote down his tone, his words, her feelings. It wasn't just for clarity, it was for survival. Every page became a record of her unraveling marriage. Then came the accident. It was a rainy evening. Meher was walking down the polished wooden staircase, holding the railing, careful with each step. Zaim stood at the bottom of the stairs, talking on the phone. His voice low. As Meher reached the middle step, her foot slipped. The wood was slick, and her balance had already been shaky. She tumbled forward, landing hard on her side. A sharp cry escaped her lips. The phone call ended abruptly, but Zaim didn't run to her. He stood still, watching. It was the maid, Nadia, who came rushing from the hallway and knelt beside Meher, panicked. Baji, are you okay? Let me help you. Zaim slowly approached, his expression unreadable. I told you to be careful, he said, almost coldly. You should wear better slippers. Meher looked up at him, shocked. You're not even gonna help me up? He extended a hand lazily after a long pause, but by then Nadia had already helped her to the sofa. Her ribs ached. Her legs were bruised, but nothing hurt more than the realization that the man she once called her protector was now indifferent to her pain. Later that night, alone in her room, Mayer opened her journal and wrote just one sentence. He didn't help me when I fell. It wasn't just a physical fall, it was symbolic. The final confirmation that she could no longer depend on Zaim for care, for love, or even for basic humanity. And in that quiet, rainy night, Maher realized something terrifying. The man who once lifted her up could now be the one to let her fall. Even further, the signs were no longer whispers, they were screams. Maher knew she couldn't ignore them any longer. One Friday evening, just after sunset, Zaim left the house dressed in a charcoal gray suit and his favorite designer watch, something he usually wore only for important events. He claimed he had a late-night investor dinner and wouldn't be home till midnight. But Mayer had heard enough lies to know when another was being told. She waited 10 minutes after he drove away, then quickly wrapped herself in a plain shawl and called a Kareem. Her heart beat violently as she instructed the driver to follow Zaim's car from a discreet distance. She didn't have a full plan, only a gut feeling that tonight she would see the truth with her own eyes. After nearly half an hour of weaving through Lahore's traffic, Zaim's car pulled up to La Belle Étoile, an upscale French restaurant known for candlelit dinners and an ultra-private ambiance. It wasn't the kind of place for business deals. It was where men took the women they wanted to impress. Maher paid the driver and stayed in the car. She slid down slightly in her seat, peeking just above the dashboard. A few minutes later, a woman stepped out of a black BMW, heels clicking on the pavement like a practice rhythm. She was stunning, tall, poised, dressed in a silk emerald dress that clung to her curves, paired with a Chanel clutch and perfect red lips. She greeted Zaim with a kiss on the cheek, laughing softly as he placed his hand on the small of her back and guided her inside. Maher's breath caught in her throat. Her world tilted. This wasn't speculation anymore. This wasn't perfume on a collar or lipstick on a cuff. This was her husband, openly whining and dining another woman. And not just any woman, a woman who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, dripping in confidence. The kind of confidence Maher hadn't felt in months. But she didn't cry, not here. Not now. Instead, she sat there numb, frozen in place, for almost an hour before finally asking the driver to take her home. That night, she didn't confront Zaim. She didn't scream or rage or ask why. She had done that already. And what had it given her? This time, she wanted answers. Not from home, but from the facts. Over the next few days, Maher became someone else. Quiet, focused, careful. She moved through her house like a ghost, unnoticed. When Zaim left for work, she began going through his study. At first, she wasn't sure what she was looking for. But she knew Zaim, knew how meticulous he was about control and money. So she searched his drawers, USBs, and desk folders. Then his home office desktop. What she found chilled her. Bank statements that didn't match what he told her. Large transfers to an unfamiliar account. Receipts for luxury items Maher had never seen. Business emails between Zaim and someone signed AR. And in one of those emails, a line that made her blood run cold. We'll move the assets under Alina's holding company before year end. Maher will never notice. Alina, now she had a name, a full identity, and it wasn't just about infidelity. It was about betrayal on every level: financial, emotional, and legal. Zaim and Alina weren't just lovers. They were partners in a calculated plan to isolate Maher, strip her of power, and possibly cut her off financially after the baby, her baby, the child she had carried with love and hope. Even as Zaim pulled away, Meher sat at the desk, staring at the screen, every breath shallow. And then her mind went backward to the years she had poured into Zaim's dreams. They'd married when he had barely anything. She had given up a scholarship abroad to stay and support him, choosing love over ambition. She worked too, part-time jobs during his startup phase, editing reports for a consultancy and tutoring children in the evening. She paid rent when he couldn't. She encouraged him when investors laughed at him. She loaned him money from her father's savings, promising to pay it back. When Zaim finally found success, she clapped the loudest, celebrated him, stood beside him as he posed for pictures at award shows, introducing her simply as my wife, never once acknowledging she had been the backbone of his rise. And now he was repaying her with secrets, deceit, and betrayal. But Meher was done being quiet. From that night forward, she started making copies of everything. She scanned documents, took photos with her phone, backed up files to a private drive, and even recorded brief voice memos of her observations. She researched asset protection, inheritance laws, and her rights as a wife and mother under Pakistani law. She visited a women's legal aid center under the guise of a checkup and spoke to a discreet lawyer, showing him the files. The lawyer raised his eyebrows. "This isn't just an affair," he said. "This is strategic financial abuse. You're smart to get ahead of it." Meher left the office with trembling hands, but a burning resolve. Alina might have walked into her life, thinking she could erase her. Zaim may have thought he'd chosen a more exciting, obedient version of Meher, but they had both underestimated the strength of a woman with everything to lose and more than enough courage to fight back. The rain had begun softly that evening, pattering against the tall windows of the mansion like a quiet warning. Meher stood by the living room archway, arms folded across her swollen belly, listening to the ticking of the wall clock. It was almost 9 p.m. Zaim had been gone all day again. But this time she didn't feel dread, she felt ready. She had spent the past week preparing herself mentally, emotionally, and legally. All the files were backed up, copies made, and stored securely. She hadn't confronted him yet. She had waited for the right moment and for the right strength. And now it had come. The front door slammed open, echoing like a thunderclap. Zaim walked in, his white shirt damp at the shoulders and his mood darker than the sky outside. His hair was slightly tousled, his cologne stronger than usual, and his eyes cold. Unreadable dot, he walked past her without a word. "Zaim," Meher called softly but firmly, "we need to talk." "I don't have time for your drama tonight," he snapped, tossing his keys onto the console table. "I know about Alina," she said flatly. He stopped mid-stride. Slowly, he turned back to her. "What did you say?" "I said I know about Alina. I know about the accounts, the boutique, the dinners, the emails, the money you tried to hide under her name." Her voice didn't shake. Not this time. For a long, silent moment, Zaim simply stared at her. Then a bitter laugh escaped his lips. "You've been spying on me now? Pregnant, hormonal, and now paranoid too." "Don't deflect," Meher said. "You've been planning to erase me. I was never going to stay quiet forever. You're lucky I let you stay this long," he muttered, stepping closer. "I built this empire. You were just there. Don't act like you're some saint who made me. You wouldn't be anything if I hadn't believed in you." She fired back. "I gave up everything for you. I believed in you when no one else did." "Oh, please," Zaim scoffed. "You gave up a useless degree and your family's pity money. I made myself. I outgrew you." There it was. The truth unmasked. Raw and cruel. Meher's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not afraid of you, Zaim. Not anymore. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I have everything saved. You're not going to get away with this." A silence followed that felt longer than it was. Rain lashed harder against the windows, thunder rumbling in the distance. Then suddenly, Zame's face softened. He exhaled slowly, as if trying to compose himself. "Okay," he said. "You're upset. You're right. I haven't handled things well. Let's talk, all right? Come here." Meher frowned, wary. He stepped toward the staircase, gesturing for her to follow. "Let's go upstairs. I don't want the staff hearing all this." Her instincts screamed at her to stay put, but something in her, some final hope that maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't end in ruin made her move. She followed him slowly toward the staircase, one hand resting protectively over her baby bump. The air between them was thick, charged, like a storm was gathering just beneath their skin. They reached the first step, and then it happened. With a sharp, calculated shove, Zame pushed her. There was no hesitation. No flicker of guilt, just cold intent. Meher's scream tore through the silence as her feet lost contact with the ground. Time slowed, her body tumbling in what felt like slow motion. Pain exploded through her back, her shoulder slammed against the banister, her belly twisting in the air. Her head hit the edge of a step, and everything went white dot, then dash, black dot. Darkness swallowed her. The sound of screams. Not hers. A maid. Nadia? The blaring wail of sirens in the distance. Voices. So many. Voices. "Don't touch her. Don't move her. She's bleeding. Call an ambulance now. Where's her husband? Was anyone with her?" Meher drifted in and out of consciousness. Her ears registered chaos, but her body was numb. She couldn't open her eyes. Couldn't move. Couldn't speak. But inside her womb, she felt something movement. Faint, but there. Her baby was still alive. She tried to speak, but her lips barely moved. The pain in her ribs was unbearable. Her head throbbed. Her vision was a blur of ceiling lights and faces leaning over her. She's losing blood fast. She's 8 months pregnant, get OBGYN ready. She was wheeled through a corridor, a mask placed over her mouth, needles in her arm. Everything faded again. When she awoke next, it was quiet, sterile white walls, beeping machines, the heavy scent of antiseptic. Her eyes fluttered open slowly. Her entire body ached, but her mind raced. Her hand shot instinctively to her stomach, bandaged. Sore, but still round. A nurse entered. "You're awake, thank God. The baby?" Meher rasped, barely audible. The nurse smiled gently. "Still holding on, a miracle. You had internal bruising and a concussion, but we're monitoring both of you closely." Tears welled in Meher's eyes. Relief, disbelief, rage all swirling inside her like a storm that had nowhere to go. Zaem. He had done this. Tried to end her. Tried to end their child. The betrayal was no longer emotional or financial. It had turned physical, violent, real. She remembered his face calm, almost blank as she fell. He had meant for her not to survive, but she had had her baby. And now her silence would become her weapon. This time, Meher would not scream. She would document. She would expose. She would fight. She wasn't broken. She was awake in Dot, and she was going to bring it all crashing down. Fluorescent hospital lights hummed faintly above Meher's bed, casting a sterile glow across the stark white room. A steady beeping from the heart monitor was the only reminder that life still pulsed within her. Her head throbbed with dull, persistent pain. Her ribcage burned every time she inhaled, and her left arm was tightly bandaged. But her first thought, even before she opened her eyes, was of the baby. She stirred, groaning softly. "Meher," a nurse said gently, noticing her movement. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered open. It took a moment for the world to come into focus, the nurse's kind face, the floor dripping steadily beside her, and the cool breeze of the ceiling fan. The weight of pain hit her all at once, but she managed to whisper, "My baby." The nurse smiled. "Still with us. Strong heartbeat. You both survived, Meshla." Tears streamed down Meher's temples. Relief coursed through her broken body like warm sunlight after a storm. Her child was alive. That meant she still had a reason to keep fighting. Later that afternoon, Zaim appeared. He stood at the door of her hospital room with a bouquet of white lilies, a carefully arranged frown on his face. He looked like the perfect picture of a grieving husband, his collar unbuttoned, his eyes tired. "How are you feeling?" he asked, stepping inside cautiously. Meher didn't respond. She simply watched him, expression blank. The doctors told me it could be memory loss from the impact, he said, sitting down. "You slipped, Meher, on the stairs. You were rushing." "I tried to catch you, but," she said nothing. "Just blinked slowly. I told them it was an accident," he continued. His tone rehearsed. "They've accepted it. No need to drag this through investigations. You just focus on resting, all right?" She kept her face still. Her breath slowed. Zaem leaned in slightly, testing her. "Do you remember anything from that night?" Meher stared at him, then let her eyes flutter closed. A beat of silence passed. When she opened them again, she gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "No," she whispered. "It's all blurry." Zaim exhaled in relief. "Good. That's good." He reached out to place a hand over hers, but she pulled it away, weakly but clearly. He stood, face hardening slightly. "Just get better." And with that, he left Dot as the door clicked shut. Meher stared up at the ceiling, her heart thudding. She had just confirmed what she needed to know. Zaim thought she didn't remember. That meant she had time. Time to act. While he stayed careless, the next day her mother arrived. Amy walked in with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. "Mary Allah, Meher, what happened, Beta?" she asked, brushing her daughter's hair off her forehead. "They said you slipped." "I did," Meher interrupted, voice flat. "I fell." Her mother paused. "You're sure?" Her eyes searched Meher's face, seeing the truth behind the words. "I don't want to talk about it right now," Meher said softly. Then she gripped her mother's wrist gently and whispered, "But soon." Amy's lips tightened. She nodded. "Okay, I'm here." The silence between them spoke volumes. Her mother knew. She didn't press. She didn't cry. She simply sat with her, holding her hand, that night. When the nurses left and the ward quieted, Meher asked for her phone. It had survived in her purse, cracked but functional. She opened her hidden cloud storage folder and found all the evidence still safely stored. Photos of Zaim's bank transfers, screenshots of emails between him and Alina, scanned copies of receipts and asset forms, everything she had spent weeks collecting. She sent a short, encrypted email to the lawyer she had consulted weeks ago, attaching the files. Subject, confirmed message. "I remember everything." He pushed me, proceed as discussed. The lawyer replied within minutes. Received, sit tight. "We begin tomorrow." She exhaled deeply, a mixture of pain and purpose settling in her chest. Over the next 2 days, Meher played her part. She let Zaim believe she was helpless, forgetful, and broken. When he visited, she asked vague questions. "Did you find my phone? How did I fall again?" She watched his rehearsed lies stack one atop the other like a house of cards. Baby continued to grow strong inside her, as did her resolve. No more weeping, no more confrontation. This wasn't about fighting with Zaim, it was about outsmarting him. She wasn't just surviving now. She was planning Dot by the 4th day. Her discharge papers were ready. She had a fractured rib, a mild concussion, and instructions for full bed rest. But her mind was sharper than ever. As she sat in the wheelchair being wheeled out of the hospital. Her hand protectively on her belly, Meher stared straight ahead. Zaim walked beside her, phone in hand, already distracted. He had no idea that the woman he thought he had silenced was already 5 steps ahead, and she was just getting started. 3 weeks had passed since Meher was discharged from the hospital. From the outside, life at the mansion seemed to have returned to normal. Meher rested in her room, the staff resumed their quiet routines, and Zaim behaved like the concerned husband, checking on her occasionally, appearing affectionate in front of others, even buying her a bouquet of lilies again. But beneath that polished veneer, a storm was brewing. Zaim had no idea that every move he made was being watched, recorded, and relayed through Meher's legal team. The evidence she had sent her lawyer was now in the hands of the Federal Investigation Agency, FIA, NAB, National Accountability Bureau, and a seasoned investigative journalist from a major media outlet. And Meher? She had turned her pain into strategy. Flashback, 2 weeks ago, hospital bed, the night she sent the final files from her hospital bed. Her lawyer, Advocate Salman Jaffrey, called her directly. Meher Sahiba, he said, voice low but firm. This isn't just about domestic abuse anymore. The financial documents you've provided show clear signs of fraud, asset concealment, and money laundering. Combined with your personal injury, this is attempted murder and economic abuse that will need perfect timing. What do I do next? She had asked, her voice still weak but steady. Nothing, he said. Play along. Let them feel safe. Let them walk straight into their own destruction. So she did. Present day, the trap Closashim had started acting confident again, arrogant even. He had begun whispering plans to Alina about relocating to Dubai before the baby's birth, starting over in a penthouse with Meher conveniently left behind. He thought he was invincible. He didn't know that his every text, every transaction, every business call was being tracked out one evening. Meher sat in the living room, a blanket wrapped around her, her baby kicking gently beneath it. She watched as Zim strutted in, humming to himself, suitcase in hand. Going somewhere? She asked softly. Just a quick meeting in Islamabad, he replied with a smirk. Back tomorrow? She nodded. Safe flight? That was all. No emotion, no suspicion. Just a wife saying goodbye. But the moment he stepped out the door, Meher. Message Salman, he's on the move. Check airport activity. Within 2 hours, Zaim Khalid's name had been flagged at Allama Iqbal International Airport. Before he could board his private jet, FIA agents stormed the hangar. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. What is this madness? Do you know who I am? He roared, thrashing as officers surrounded him. Yes, one agent replied calmly. A man under arrest for attempted murder, embezzlement, and tax fraud. You'll have plenty of time to explain yourself, Mr. Khalid. The fall of Zaim Khalid. The next morning, every news channel in the country exploded with the headline, Pregnant Wife Survives. Alleged murder plot by billionaire husband, financial scandal unfolds, anchor after anchor detailed. How Meher had been pushed down a staircase, survived a near-fatal fall while carrying their unborn child, and how she had quietly collected evidence of Zaim's massive financial fraud while recovering. Clips of Zaim's arrest were played on loop. Journalists camped outside his office. Protesters gathered at his gated residence. The stock value of his company dropped overnight. Investors pulled out. Board members resigned. The once polished face of Zaim Khalid, business mogul, tech visionary, darling of the elite, was now plastered across the screens as the man who tried to kill his pregnant wife. Alina's public unmasking, meanwhile, Alina's world came crumbling down just as fast. Investigators revealed her involvement in forging property documents and illegally holding assets under her name. Luxury handbags, undisclosed bank accounts, and even business shares were traced back to her. When the media caught wind of her identity, her social media was bombarded. Fashion labels quietly dropped her as an influencer. Her photo shoots were pulled from magazines. Her friends stopped replying. Invitations to elite events vanished. And the comments under her latest Instagram post, which had once praised her flawless beauty, now read homewrecker, accomplice to attempted murder. Beauty fades, karma doesn't. How do you sleep at night knowing you almost killed a baby? Alina deactivated her accounts within hours. Meher's hidden strategy back at the mansion. Meher watched it all unfold from the comfort of her bedroom. The downfall she had once feared was now unfolding perfectly, not hers, but Zaim's. She thought back to the hospital bed where she'd made her final decision. She wouldn't beg. She wouldn't scream. She would destroy him with the same calmness he had used to betray her. Her strategy had been simple. Document, disguise, deliver. She documented everything. While pretending to be weak, she disguised her awareness with silence. She delivered justice through calculated exposure. She didn't even need to testify yet. Her evidence spoke louder than any tears ever could. The calm after the chaos for the first time in months. Meher felt like she could breathe. The man who had tried to take her life, her dignity, and her future was now facing his own worst nightmare. Irrelevance, infamy, and imprisonment. She no longer had to fear the stairs. She no longer had to sleep with one eye open. She had turned her pain into proof. And karma, slow, silent, and unstoppable, had done the rest. 6 months had passed since the day Zaim Khalid was dragged from his private jet in handcuffs, and the dust from the storm had finally begun to settle. The woman sitting on the sunlit veranda of a modest but charming home in Lahore bore little resemblance to the quiet, fearful figure who had once lived in a mansion built on betrayal. Now in a house filled with warmth instead of marble, with truth instead of silence. Meher cradled her newborn son, Ayang, as a gentle spring breeze kissed their skin. Her home was smaller, 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a garden she was growing with her own hands. But it was hers. Every potted plant, every carefully chosen curtain, every quiet morning belonged to her and her son. There were no footsteps echoing down long, cold corridors, no expensive silence, no watching eyes, just peace. The nights were still long, newborn. Cries, diaper changes, and endless lullabies that Meher welcomed every moment. She had feared for this child's life once. Felt her world spin in slow motion as she tumbled down a staircase pushed by the man who should have protected them. Yet now, as she gazed into Ayon's eyes, all she felt was gratitude. He had survived. So had she. And in their survival, a new chapter had begun. Justice delivered. Zaim had been formally charged with attempted murder, financial fraud, and conspiracy to conceal assets. His trial had been swift, thanks in large part to the meticulous evidence Meher had collected. The press had devoured every detail. Courtroom sketches of Zaim, looking gaunt and hollow-faced, were shared across social media. Once hailed as a visionary entrepreneur, he was now reduced to headlines light, from power to prison, the rise and fall of Zaim Khalid. He had been denied bail after his first hearing. The prosecution's case was airtight. Too much money had changed hands. Too many lies had been told. And the attempted murder of a pregnant wife, that sealed his fate in the public eye. Behind bars, his influence faded. His empire was sold off in parts. Investors who once praised him now pretended not to know him. His name became a cautionary tale in boardrooms, not a legacy. Alina, disgraced and disappeared. Alina had not been formally charged with violence, but her role in the financial crimes was undeniable. The court ordered her assets frozen and demanded restitution for her fraudulent holdings. Socially, her downfall was even steeper. She vanished from the internet. Her luxury lifestyle dissolved overnight. Last Meher heard through a legal update, Alina had left for Europe, attempting to start over in obscurity, but Meher didn't care where she was. She no longer occupied space in her heart or mind. Alina's punishment had come in the form of irrelevance, and Meher knew, for people like her, that was the deepest cut. A new purpose in the weeks following the trial, Meher had received. Hundreds of messages from women across Pakistan, even beyond, thanking her for speaking out. Some had followed her story in the papers. Others through a televised interview she gave to a local women's rights organization. "You gave us courage." One woman wrote, "I left my abusive husband after reading about you." Said another, "My daughter says you're her hero." At first, Meher didn't know what to do with the attention. She had only wanted survival, not a spotlight. But then something inside her shifted. She reached out to SADA, a women's legal aid foundation, and offered to volunteer. Within weeks, she was helping them design outreach programs for victims of domestic violence, especially those who couldn't speak publicly, those trapped by fear, culture, or shame. She became a counselor in training, then a workshop speaker. Her voice, once silenced in her own home, now echoed in courtrooms, seminar halls, and women's shelters. She wasn't just surviving, she was leading. Her strength, once dismissed as emotional fragility, had become her shield and her weapon. Peace in the small things in her new home, Meher rediscovered herself. She planted a small herb garden. She painted again soft pastels on canvas. Scenes of resilience. She journaled every night, not out of fear, but reflection. Her mornings were simple, making chai, feeding Ayan, playing soft Quran recitations in the background. Her mother visited often, bringing home-cooked meals and stories from the old neighborhood. There were no grand declarations, no lavish gifts, just laughter, healing, and love, quiet, enduring love between a mother and her son. Every kick, every coup, every tiny yawn from Ayan reminded her why she had fought so hard to escape. She wasn't just building a life. She was redefining it. A walk to remember. One bright Sunday morning, Meher dressed Ayan in a soft white romper and tucked him into a stroller. The sun filtered through the tree branches as they strolled through Gulshan Park, the same park she had once visited with Zaim years ago, when love still wore a mask. Now, she walked alone, but not lonely. She passed young couples laughing on benches, children chasing bubbles, an old man feeding birds. A world full of beginnings and endings, just like hers. Ayan cooed as a breeze tousled his hair. She stopped under a blooming cherry blossom tree, knelt beside the stroller, and kissed his forehead. "You know," she whispered, "people think justice is fire and fury, that it's courtrooms and punishments and watching someone fall." She stroked his tiny hand. "But real justice is peace, it's freedom, it's getting to live without fear, to breathe without checking who's behind you, to love without apology." Ayan blinked at her, his eyes wide and calm. Meher smiled. "We don't need revenge, my love," she whispered as the wind gently rustled the leaves. "We already have justice." And with that, she rose, wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, and continued walking toward the future, toward hope, toward a life she built with her own hands.